Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and Shelly Epperly here today. It is Monday, January the 28th, 2019, and I have a tangled tongue. It's 8 p.m. in New York, 5 p.m. in Los Angeles, 1 a.m. in London, and Sydney, Australia is at 12 noon. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for tuning in for yet another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And now that I got my tongue untangled, how you doing, Shelly?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. Yeah, I had a super lazy weekend. Well, not totally lazy. I went and visited my mom on Saturday, and then Sunday my husband woke up with an abscess tooth, so we just
Ooh,
did nothing all day. He just
yeah.
went to the dentist a little while ago, and he's got to get another root canal. So,
Oh, that sucks. Yeah. Well, we'll hold out positive thoughts for him and healing thoughts and help him to heal up his tooth in his mouth ASAP.
yeah. I think he's got some really good antibiotics now, so it
Very good.
should be good. But yeah, everything else is going really good. My businesses are seem to be falling together. I just have started making it a habit of every morning, just really making sure that I'm grateful for what I have, but also being grateful for what's to come today, grateful for the opportunities, grateful for you know, the great times I had, just yeah,
Sure.
I just kind of picture what I want to happen that day and things to fall in place, and it works so good. So
Those processes that we do first, especially the ones we do first thing in the morning, are so important. I've really
yeah,
become I've become very appreciative of them and recognize just how important they are, particularly in the last few weeks. Um, if I skip a day or I don't do them till later in the day or whatever, I feel it now. I don't know about you, but it gets to the point now where if I don't do my mirror exercise, my little vision video I've set up, and a couple other things that I like to do, it's like the day hasn't gotten off to a good start. So I appreciate the fact that you're doing your gratitude. Not to be,
yeah.
but
It really makes all the difference in the world, and I'm not very good at um catching up. If I don't do it in the morning, I'm gonna do it later. So I either do it in the morning or it just doesn't happen. And then if it doesn't happen, it usually still doesn't affect me so much as having a bad day. But it definitely, when I do it in the morning, I definitely see the fruition of things throughout the day more, because I'm expecting them.
absolutely. Yeah, I can't remember what the term was. Louis says that Abraham Hicks doesn't call it segment intending anymore. What do they call it? Oh, path paving. That's what they call it. That's the new
Path
terminology.
paving.
Yeah.
That's nice.
That's a good term. I like that one. It's a little bit
Yeah,
more
yeah.
direct. Yeah. But it's also very, very important. I really came to appreciate this past weekend how important it can be because, I mean, you're probably like me. Most of your days probably go very nicely. You're probably in a good space most of the time. But every once in a while, you wake up and for whatever reason, you're just not feeling it. You're just not in a good space.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me on Sunday in particular. And I woke up and I did my mirror exercise and it felt hollow. I didn't even feel it like I normally do. And it was just one thing after another, but the whole day was like this massive struggle. But that's where I really appreciated having the processes to do. Even though they weren't working as well as they normally did, just having a list of them on the wall really, really helped me get through a tough day, a very, very tough day.
Hmm.
And I can't say things didn't go wrong. They did, but they went wrong in the right way. Like for instance, when Anne Marie and I did the podcast that evening, she couldn't even be there for the beginning of it, and then when she did connect in, she and Mike were in a restaurant. Where there was a live band playing, and so we have this live band coming over, and I say, well, that's not going to really work too well. So she calls back a little bit later on. I'm doing the show solo. About halfway through the show, the entire connection drops out and then kicks back in. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff
Oh,
going on. But because we stayed in as positive a place as we could get, and that's what it's all about, just feeling better. Even if you're not feeling good, you go for feeling better. It made the difference. We got through. And, it
hmm.
wasn't the best, it wasn't the most stellar show we'd ever done, but we got through it. It was a decent show, and more importantly, I came through it feeling like the next day was going to be better, which of course was today.
Mhm.
Today was better. So those processes, they, they're important to have a good day, but they're really important when you're not having a good day. That's what I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
I don't know what
Yeah.
you're,
That
but
that's true. And I totally get what you're saying when you go through them and you don't really feel them, because that's what I've been kind of doing like the
mm,
last week or so. I've just been like, okay, I'm so grateful for, this house and my car and my relationships with my family and my friends, and I'm so, grateful for the opportunities that are going to come today and all the great stuff I'm going to sell in my store today, and then and this morning I was just like, that's where the like work comes in. And I think part of it's just because we're busy, because I usually do it when I'm getting ready for my day. So
mm,
just in the midst of, my shower and my curling my hair and putting my makeup on, I try to take that time to also be doing that. So it's just like, okay, I just need to get ready and get out the door, instead of just going, no, this only literally takes like 2 extra minutes to just stop and feel it, because you really have to feel it. If you can just go through the motions and it will help, but when you feel it, it's like a fast track,
mm.
and it really helps so much. Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed today, and I specifically was talking about it with Louis after he and I had finished the podcast this morning, was that so often, and it's because of what we talk about. I mean, we on this show, we talk about it being our daily dose of happy, and it is, because we try to keep it as positive as we can, and yet we're inevitably talking about stuff that isn't going right, and how do we deal with it, or understanding the difference between what you focus on and stuff just happening to you, and in order to understand that, you have to tell stories about things that don't go right and so forth. So I was
Mhm.
noticing that even with our positive angle, which is pretty positive, we still spend a large chunk of the show talking about negative stuff. And Louis pointed
Mhm.
out to me, well, as long as we're not focusing on it for more than 17 seconds or whatever, we're okay. We're not manifesting anything. But even so, it does create kind of a pool of energy, or a pool of experience, so to speak. And I was
Mhm.
really good at that. So I don't know exactly how to accomplish what it is I want to accomplish, but starting with this show, I'm going to be making a conscious effort to see how often I can state something in the positive. Even if we're talking about a difficult topic, I'm going to see how often can I find a way to state it in the positive, because,
Mhm.
among other things, we live with a language, the English language, that is dominated by negative terms. There are far more negative words than there are positive words in the English language. I don't know if you ever noticed that. That bothered
I
me.
I I haven't noticed
Oh,
that.
well, look at the Abraham Hicks scale, for instance, the emotional guidance scale. Like
Mhm.
two-thirds of the scale are negative terms. Only about one-third is positive. That gives you an idea of what kind of ratio we're talking about. And even with things like idioms, I mean, English idioms, words that aren't, they aren't strictly according to Hoyle, but they've turned into words over time, and they kind of, mean something different from what they seem to mean. That sort of thing. English idioms are loaded with negativity. It's incredible how many of them are negative based. So it's the more I look at it, the more I realize just how big of a challenge it is. It's a big, big challenge. Can we find ways, no matter what we're talking about, to find the positive side? And I don't
Mhm.
mean, like laughing in the face of horrible things happening. That's not what I mean. Just finding where the positive is, because it's inevitably there.
Well, well, even in the horrible things, like, just for instance, I was talking about the the government shutdown, and they've started back up, but there's a lot of people that didn't get those paychecks, that live paycheck to paycheck, and were really struggling.
Right?
And so that's all over the news, all these people and all their hardships and everything. But what I really heard was, like, just on Facebook alone, I saw many businesses, restaurants especially in my community, that were offering up meals. If you bring in you know your state ID badge or whatever from your work, we'll give
Right.
you a free burger and fries, or we'll
Oh,
give you a free box of food, or we'll give you a free couple gallons of gas or whatever. And I just thought, what you're talking about where you flip it, like you can take horrible situations like 9/11, and immediately there were stories about the heroes. There
oh
was
yeah.
there was stories about the helpers and the people that, even inside the building, you heard about those
Mhm.
people, even that passed away, but were helping people get through the stairwells before it went down. And it's like, to me, when something like that happens, something tragic, and things happen tragic in our lives every day that we perceive as, this huge tragedy, when you really see the light of it, it really is no big deal. But there's always a lesson. There's always opportunity for to do things in a better way in all of those situations. Like I was just watching. There's this woman. She does juggling the Jenkins. It's her blog, and she's on Facebook, and I think she's on Instagram and stuff. And she's an ex-addict, and so she basically took her first drink when she was like 19, and she just never stopped.
Oh.
She was very prone to addiction.
Hmm.
And she's got 2 or 3 kids now, and she does this blog about being sober and stuff. So she was just talking about how she was in traffic. They were going on a little family vacation, and she was like, um, all upset because they were at a standstill on the freeway. And it was like 8 o'clock at night, and she was just like, oh man, like everybody's just flipping out because they're on their way somewhere. And she found out a couple hours later, because they got stuck in traffic like that for like an hour and a half, like at a standstill. And of course, that's just tragic for everyone involved, and everybody's flipping out like first world problems,
Yeah. Right.
We all got a car, we all got snacks, but we're flipping out. And she found out that it was a church van, and that like 4 kids had lost their lives that night in a
Wow.
rollover. And so she just like, stopped, did this little video, and she said, I just want people to recognize that, like, we were so lucky we still had our kids. There were families that were affected that their lives will never ever be the same, and I was so inconvenienced by being in traffic for an extra hour and a half. and
Yeah.
and so she was, like, just to know that, just to go, wait a minute, I need to appreciate what I have. I mean, even if you can't make light of that situation because there was nothing you could personally do because you were 10 miles back or whatever, but just to go, wait a minute, I need to step back and just appreciate what I have. So
Mhm.
I I just love those stories, because
Yeah.
it's true. It's so
I think
true.
true. And we normally try to stay away from topics like 9/11 just because we don't want to get really depressed. But since you mentioned it,
Right,
one of
right.
one of the great positive stories out of 9/11 is that the Twin Towers normally held 15,000 office workers every day, and less
Hmm.
than 3,000 actually got killed that day. And most of
Yeah.
them weren't even in the building that day, even though it was a work day, a regular work day. The only way
Hmm.
that I know of to explain that is spirit or God or the law of attraction or however you want it to label it, did what was
Hmm.
necessary to keep those people away, as many people away as possible. And
Yeah.
because otherwise, I mean, there should have been a whole lot more killed. But actually, 12,000 people got saved that day. That gets skipped
Yeah.
over a lot. And I think that's really,
Yeah.
really worthy.
Yeah.
Jeffrey
And I
has our
just,
first question, by the way,
oh,
and it's right in
oh,
line with
good.
what we're talking about too, which is really cool. And this is a Q&A, folks. So if you're listening to the live stream and you want to plug a question into the comments section, by all means do that, and we'll be glad to bring it up and talk about it and share ideas, and we'll share your comments as well as we can. But Jeffrey's asking, can we discuss the labeling of things as positive or negative? Who decides which is which? Which is a great question. Really good.
Hmm.
Um, and do you want to take a stab at it first, or do you want me to go first?
I just was gonna say, I think it's all about perception and where you personally are at. I just think that happiness is a choice, and you can, even if, like, you said you didn't want to talk about it much, but even as something as tragic as 9/11, and as petty as being stuck in traffic, or you're out of toothpaste or something, like um I mean, some people that would ruin, like that, like on The Secret, where she stubs her toe and then the whole day just goes to crap. It just, I just think that it's your perception of it. And when you get into really using the law of attraction to your advantage, when things like that happen, instead of going to that place like, I can't brush my teeth, I'm not gonna be able to, people can turn that into a mountain, and instead just going, okay, well, I got some Tic Tacs downstairs, and I got some mouthwash, so let's get on with it. Like,
Hmm.
and I'll put that on my list. I mean, I just think that from something as petty as that, to a national tragedy, it depends on where your focus is. And if your focus is on the lesson and the opportunity that's involved, then, I have a little example. My brother, so my mom's dad, she was raised by her stepdad for the most part, but her dad was very involved in her life. And so he was our grandpa Bob, and he would come and visit like every Christmas.
Okay.
And so my brother went into the military right out of high school. We like graduated at like 1 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock he was on a bus to basic training. Like he had it all planned out, and he was going to be an airborne ranger, and he had qualified for everything. He was so excited. He was going to go through basic and then go through ranger training, and about 2 weeks before his pre-ranger training, he got his first of two groin hernias,
Ooh.
which automatically just bumped him out of that.
Hmm.
And because he was already airborne, he turned into airborne infantry, which is like about as low as you can go as far as being in a war.
Right.
And so we were of course freaking out. He was very upset because he was all about challenging himself. So he ended, instead of going off to ranger training, he went in and had his hernias um, repaired, and then came home to convalesce and get better. So he was home that Christmas, and that was our last Christmas with my grandpa because he passed
Hmm.
away the next May. And he
Yeah.
got to have, because he was an adult at that point, he got to have the experience of of watching a football game with my grandpa as an adult, and listening to my grandpa cuss and just be another guy instead of being grandpa. And that, I mean, it was just like this really important moment where he was like, that was really cool to experience my grandpa like that instead of as like a kid. And
Right.
so I always said that that was one of the big reasons that all fell into place, but it was tragic. It was really hard, and it all ended up being great. And my brother never did go to war or anything, but yeah, it's just like interesting how those things happen. And I just remember even then, before I really had a grasp on the law of attraction and how it all worked, it was just like, oh, it made total sense. Like that happened so he could have this experience, this neat experience with grandpa that he would never have the chance to do again. And he probably wouldn't have ever seen my grandpa again just
Right.
because he wouldn't have been home for that. So yeah. So it would, like, that's just an example of, in the moment it was rough and we were all upset, but then it turned into something really great. And sometimes you have to wait for that.
Yes, it's true. That's very true. Yeah. I love what Cindy Chavez, who, of course, co-hosts with me on Tuesday mornings and for both of the podcasts on Wednesday. I love what she has to say on this subject because she likes to point out that positive and negative, for the most part, or at least to a large extent, are about moral judgments. They're about I'm in favor of that or I'm against that. I think that's a good thing for people to experience, but I think that's a bad thing for people to experience. Positive, negative. When in fact, what's really going on is I prefer this, I don't prefer that.
Hmm.
So she and I have kind of adopted the behavior of saying, I mean, I still refer to it as positive, negative. I kind of slip a little bit, but when I'm mindful about it, I try to remember it's actually preferred and not preferred. This is what I prefer.
Right.
This is what I don't prefer. And that fits in with what you were talking about regarding the idea that this is perception. My
Hmm.
perception may be different from your perception, which may be different from his perception or from her perception. Our perceptions can all be different because we have different goals in life, different things we want to have happen,
Hmm.
different experiences we want to have. So my positive might be your negative or vice versa. Maybe your positive is my negative. That's why preferred and not preferred, I think, is the better way to go. And when we express it that way, well, then the question that Jeffrey asks is, can we discuss the labeling of things as preferred or not preferred? Who decides which is which? Pretty clear. The person who prefers it becomes very straight
Right.
point.
Right.
So that's the way
Yeah.
I think
Because
about it.
you can also see people that, like there's people like us that are really trying to put a positive spin on everything. And we're, in my opinion, a lot happier people because of that. But there are also people that could have something amazing happen to them or get something amazing in their life. And, well, it's not going to be that way for long, or, you know what I mean? So that's their, that's their preference because they don't know any better. And that, to me, that's the people that I like to, like, number one, be a shining example for. So they're like, wait a minute, how is this happening for you? Like, why are you so happy all the time? Like, I've had people say that to me, like on Facebook, like, Shelly, it's not all happy all the time. You can't just constantly throw happiness at it. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I have bad days. Things happen to me that aren't great. But why would you want to focus on that? Like, that doesn't make sense to me now. I mean, it used to, and I think that's just because you kind of want to join the crowd, like, oh yeah, that's horrible, or oh yeah, that was great, but it's not going to last, and then something else is going to happen, and it'll get ruined, or it'll get taken away, or it was just that one day, and you know what I mean? So just like, I guess part of it is trying to follow the crowd because there's so much drama and negativity, and then when you watch the news, it's just confirmed,
Mm. Oh yeah, it's everywhere. The
So,
negativity just kind of predominates, not just in our culture, but in cultures all around the world. It's very, very big. It's very strong. Um,
mhm,
for those people who say that, oh, well, you can't be happy all the time, um, or even make the argument that you would not want to be happy all the time, I respectfully disagree. I understand
mhm,
what they're coming from. They're basically saying, well, you do your best growing when adversity happens. This is true. That's when the best
mhm,
experience happens. That's when you learn the most. Absolutely true. But I've also noted that people who deal with adversity in the best way that they can, who try to find silver linings, which is what I was trying to do yesterday. Try to find silver linings throughout whatever bad thing is going on. First of
mhm.
all, we're calling it a bad thing in light of my policy I described earlier. I'm not going to call it a bad thing. I'm going to call it a not preferred thing. And there were a
Mhm.
lot of not preferred things that were going on yesterday, things that I definitely did not prefer to have happen. But I didn't, like you said, I didn't have to focus on those. I didn't have to
Right.
say, that's my day. That's just the way it goes. I mean, I could have said that. Lots of people would say that, as you say.
Mhm.
People get very much into the drama of it. But the other way to look at the same situation is it is possible to go through a situation like that and not get down about it. I actually started to get down about it, and that's what was really concerning me. So I was really working hard to climb back up. But I can conceive and foresee the idea of having a day like that happen, and I've gotten so good at finding the positive side of it that I live and experience the day. It happens, but my mood doesn't fall down very far. It stays up in the positive zone. Maybe I like dip my toe into negative, and then I bounce back up again. So have I ignored the contrast? No. I just chose not to wallow in it. I chose not to
Mhm.
swim in it all day long. I chose to say, you know what? Okay, so that stuff's happening. It doesn't have to affect my mood. It's
Right.
not like the events control my emotions because that's what's behind that, isn't it? The idea behind that idea that, oh well, it's going to all fall apart is that those events control our emotions.
Right.
And you and I know that's a lie.
Yeah,
It's
and
very
I think
common.
that that's what I would say as far as what you're talking about, where because what you said about how well people say, well, problems and issues that come up in your life and non-preferred things come up in your life are are there to teach us and to help us grow, which I totally agree with. But when you get to a point with using the law of attraction to your benefit, um, you get to a point where it doesn't hold you down very far. Like
Right.
you know, you go out to start your car and it doesn't start, and you're like, okay, what's the lesson here? What, why is my car not starting? What do I need to learn here?
And actually, I've gotten to the point now where if something like that happens, my first question isn't what's the lesson I need to learn. My first question is, okay, why is my vibration so low? What do I have to do to turn this vibration around? That's actually my first question. Before I even want to know what the lesson is, I want to know what it's going to take to turn my feeling around.
Yeah, I think, and that's another thing. Like for me, it is all about the lesson, and you focus on your vibration, because I might have skipped out to the car and been all happy and ready to go, and my vibration was fine. But number one, what's the lesson? Like, what did I do to attract that? And then what is the solution? Like I immediately, I love being like solution based. Like people freak out about all these issues and political issues and life issues, and it's like you're just spinning your, it's like being on a stationary bike. You're just pedaling and you're not going anywhere, or nothing's happening, and you're putting out all this energy for nothing. Like, what can you do to solve it? What can you do to be a part of the solution instead of just complaining and rolling around in it? So like the whole, car scenario, it's like go out to the car, it doesn't start. Even if my knee-jerk reaction is being upset and frustrated and irritated and throwing my arms up and I don't know what I'm going to do, that doesn't last very long. Where years ago, that would have been my week. Like
Hmm.
that wouldn't have been just my morning, that or a couple 20 minutes. That would have been my week. How are we going to do this? We can't afford it. How am I'm going to have to take you to work so I can have the car. The kids are going to have to ride the bus, whatever it is, like,
Right.
just like the whole tragedy, instead of it just like, oh, this is totally going to fix itself. And within a couple hours, boom, the car is running again, or there's an extra car, or you just figure it out. It's just, that's where the law of attraction comes in, where you just go, it's going to end up better than I expect it to. And when
Hmm.
you put that out there and have faith that it will, it does. you
Hmm.
know but you
It
have to
really
feel
is.
it, and you have to really believe it, because people say, oh, well, I put that out there all the time, but do you really believe it? Do you really believe that it's going to end up better than you expected it to end up?
Today I was
Well,
talking.
I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
That's usually the answer. Yeah, absolutely. I was driving to another town to run an errand and get some gas for the car and so forth. And as I'm driving along, I start running into red lights. And I like playing with red lights because they're a fun way to kind of do a quick test with law of attraction. So I'm running into these red lights, and instantly my reaction is to check what my vibration was, to check how I'm feeling. And instantly I knew I wasn't feeling all that great. I wasn't feeling bad. If I was that
mhm,
22-point scale, I was like, maybe 10, something like that. I wasn't in a bad place, but I wasn't in a good place either. And I recognized that, okay, well, I'm getting results that are based on where I'm feeling. Let's see if I can adjust that. Let's see if I can go for all green lights. And so I would do various little processes as I'm driving along to try to improve the score, so to speak. And
yeah,
within seconds, I would get not all green lights, I'd get more green lights. Okay, so I'm saying,
right,
well, still not quite there yet. Got to work on this some more. And so I'd work on it some more. And I actually, during this trip, managed to get my mood to increase substantially on the scale to the point where I was getting green light after green light after green light. I mean, you can't get better
yeah,
testing than that.
yeah,
Instantaneous response, to tell you
yeah,
exactly how you're feeling and remind you to do a little check. Now, how do you feel right now, Walt? Oh, well, I guess I didn't feel all that good. Yeah, it's actually worse than I thought it was. I just hadn't really been paying attention, but I really wasn't feeling all that good. Or oh wow, I guess I'm feeling better than I thought I was feeling, but checking in, just finding out that's really an important thing, just knowing that. In fact, Fabian made a really nice, really interesting comment. He says, two comments actually. He says, regarding the idea of positivity and negativity and how you deal with it. He says, people tell me the same thing, but you have to make positivity a habit. And he says, it doesn't mean positive people don't deal with adversity. We just work smarter through it, not harder.
Yeah, yeah,
That's really good.
exactly.
That's really good.
Exactly. Yeah, that's perfectly said. We just
Yep.
work smarter instead of harder.
Yep. Yep.
And
So here's,
whatever that process is for you is whatever works for you. Because I noticed that Jeffrey's next question is, do the tools that you use to raise your vibration always work? Do we consistently need new tools for new circumstances? And
right.
I feel like that's kind of up to you. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
like the tools that I work are just habit now. Like I can't even really pinpoint them, I don't think, but I just know that when I'm in a spot that I need to, look for a different spot to be in and look for those solutions and those opportunities. But I don't feel like I have a set, like, okay, where's my notes? I got to make sure I'm doing this, in the correct sequence so it happens right. I think you just get to a point that you know what works for you, and what's going to work for you isn't going to work for everybody else. So you just find your magic button that you can push and change your you know how to do it smarter instead of harder.
Your solution or your approach. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's true. And actually, Amanda also followed up. I want to give my response on Jeffrey's question before going after Amanda's question, because Amanda's is really good. But Jeffrey, you were asking about the tools that you use to raise your vibration. Do they always work? Doesn't matter. I mean, on my day on Sunday where I was having a tough time, all of my tools weren't working. I mean, the very first thing that I do every morning is my mirror exercise. My mirror exercise usually gives me a nice boost for the day. Flat. Nothing yesterday. I was done with it. I thought I was lying to myself. That's how bad it went. It just did not go well at all. Well, so what? I've got 16 other tools on my list. So if the first one didn't work, go to the next one. And that's what I did. I was going through, I mean, literally, I had to go through one, two, three, four, five, six of the tools that day, just trying to find a combination that would actually get me to where I needed to be. And the first five didn't work, but the sixth one did. The sixth one was
Mm-hmm.
actually my first one. It was probably one of the first ones I should have done. That's the one that I have the most success with. That's where I go take a walk and listen to positive music at the same time. And that combination actually gave me the pickup I was looking for. But
Mm-hmm.
the other tools weren't working. They just weren't working. And, so what? Okay, that one didn't work. I'll go on to the next one. It's like, there's always a bus every 3 minutes.
I find that interesting that it's take a walk, because that's kind of like my, not necessarily taking a walk, but when someone's really frustrated with something and it's not working and they're pushing and pushing and pushing, that's what I always tell them, is just walk away from it. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
sometimes you just have to get away. Yeah.
yeah, just get it out of your head. And I had that earlier with trying to bring up some travel stuff for somebody, and it was just like, it was just frustrating me and nothing was working, and I was just like, okay, time to get up and go do something else for a little while. Like, there's and that's part of my what a solution or whatever to get out of negativity is, I have the freedom, which I'm so grateful for. I have the time freedom where I can just get up and walk away and go do a load of laundry, or go, watch TV for a few minutes, or, I don't have to be doing what I'm doing right this minute. So that's
Hmm.
that's that's nice. But
That is good. That is good. Now, Amanda has a really good question, and it's a question that actually can be answered on a couple different levels. It can be
mhm,
answered just, on the surface what the question actually asks, but the tendency is also to answer it in terms of, well, how do we solve the problem? And that actually isn't what she asked, but let me read the question. She says, "What happens when you believe and feel it, but your spouse is negative about the situation?" And what she's asking is, what actually happens? So I want to answer that question first, and then we can talk about how do you fix it. But what's actually happening is, well, If you believe it and you're feeling it and your spouse isn't feeling it, you're on different vibrational levels. So you're actually not connecting. There's not a vibrational connection going on there. So as long as you stay on that positive level and your spouse stays on that negative level, nothing happens between the two of you. You're just not connecting.
Mm-hmm.
The underlying question that I think most people think of when they see that is, well, how do you fix that situation? And that's a different question.
Mm-hmm.
I perceive it as something where I don't want to fix the situation. I said it that way kind of on purpose to give myself a way of saying no. But
Mm-hmm.
like when Louise, my wife, is just not feeling good, and I've come out doing a podcast, and I'm like psyched, I'm stoked, I'm feeling great, all this energy's flowing, and I go out to see her, and I can see she's like in the dumps. Well, if she asks, I'll tell her about how the podcast went, and she often does ask. But if she doesn't ask, I just simply try to be there for her while in my positive place. What I try
Mm-hmm.
to avoid doing is lowering myself to her place and say, "Oh, I feel so bad for you." That's the one thing I try to avoid more than anything else because now I'm down at that same vibrational level. I can't help her at that level. I have no energy to
Yeah.
give her when I'm in that low level. So I try to stay in that high level and then see if I can feed her that energy so she can kind of reach for it and have something to help pull herself up, so to speak. Um, so I mean that's the approach that I use with her, but it's going to be different with every spousal combination. Now, every couple is going to have their own different dynamic, their own ways of dealing with stuff, and you have to kind of know you and your spouse and your relationship how you're going to handle that need. I mean, the overall pattern is you try to keep yourself in a high vibrational place, but the specifics of that are going to be different from one couple to the next.
Yeah. And
I mean,
in that situation, I think that you can only be responsible for yourself. And my mom has a quote that she used to have on her refrigerator. She like did it, in the little letters, like the kids, the little colored letters that you have when your kids are little and you have them on the fridge. And it
yeah.
said, you can, and I don't remember who the quote was by, but it was, you can either be a shining example or a terrible warning. And so, I always say to people that are, like to me, maybe one of Amanda's questions is like, if she believes in the law of attraction and making it work for the best, for her, to her advantage, and her spouse is like, I don't believe in that crap, um, just do your thing and be a shining example. And when things start falling into place for you, and he's going, how did that work? How did you make that happen? I mean, to me, that's the biggest thing here. Like when I first watched The Secret, I wanted to shout it from the mountaintops, like I just wanted to share it with everybody. And not everybody is there. And that's okay. That's where the allowing comes in, where you just have to allow everybody to be on their own path with this. Because
Mm.
I think that I know so much more than I did just a couple years ago about it. And I was preaching it then like I knew everything, you know what I mean? So it's just like you're just going to keep being at better and higher levels with yourself and on your journey with this. And you can try to drag a few people along with you, and your spouse is an important person to try to drag with you because you want them to be just as happy and excited about it as you are. But it doesn't always happen that way. I mean, I was pretty lucky. I think you're probably pretty lucky with your wife. I think she's pretty on board with all of this, and I was too with my husband. He's, there was parts of him that was like, yeah, I don't know about that, but and then we started practicing it, and things just started falling together. It was like, whoa, this is amazing, and I just think that you just have to be a shining example. Is and that can be hard when you're in a relation, like a husband wife, boyfriend girlfriend relationship, because that person is right there all the time and can be trying to bring you down, because that's where, and they're not doing it because they don't want you to be happy. They're doing it because they think that it's a bunch of gibberish, they don't get it.
Or they may not even be thinking at all, just that this is the way I feel, and I want you to feel the way I
Yeah.
feel. It could be just as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I said it really does depend on the couple and what their relationship
Right.
is. That really dictates how you go about doing it. In general, you try, like you said, you try to keep yourself as that shining star, that example. And
Mhm.
truth to be told, we don't always succeed in doing that. It's very easy to get sucked down into, if the other person is feeling down, it's very easy to get sucked down. Sunday was kind of a reverse. Louise was actually in a better place than I was. I was having that really bad day, and she wasn't having a bad day. And I mentioned to her I was struggling with it and so forth, and she very honestly said to me, "I really don't know how to help you." And that was actually an
Mhm.
excellent answer. Yeah, because there's really no way for her to help me other than to just stay in her high vibrational place. That was really the only solution. But
Mhm.
she felt a little helpless because she couldn't really do anything. But she had to be very honest and say that's where it is right now. By the way, you get that kind of honesty when you're married to a psychotherapist. Louise, I don't know if you, Louise was a therapist for over 10 years, and very realistic, very hard view, a realistic view of the world because she's had to deal with so much of the let's call it the seamier side of life. Um,
Mhm.
and it gives you a certain perspective. But on the other hand, like you say, she's really bought into the whole concept and likes the idea of the law of attraction. And her background both serves her in terms of having a very grounded way of dealing with it. On the other hand, it can also kind of hold it back sometimes because she can get kind of hung up on what her psychotherapeutic teaching taught her. But
Right.
it's a benefit depending on how you look at it. If you look at it the right way, it's a benefit, and that's what she usually does, and it pays off very well. The thing that she and I used to talk about was there's a concept, and I think you and I mentioned this, we kind of talked about this last week. There's a concept out there that says that in a marriage, in a successful marriage, both parties to the marriage have to be willing to compromise. They have to be willing to, give in or, let the other person win or, that kind of stuff. And Louise and I have always laughed at that because we never had that experience. That's not the way it has worked for us. We realized what it was too. In one sense, we were kind of unfortunate, depending on how you want to look at it. We were unfortunate in that we didn't meet until we were in our 40s. On the other hand, we
Mm.
were fortunate because we didn't meet until we were in our 40s. And I say that
Right.
because that gave us those earlier years to get ourselves lined up, to get ourselves in order, to straighten, she was very much of a codependent person. She had to straighten all that stuff out. I was very much of
Right.
an lonely person who was a wallflower. I had to learn how to come out. We both had to straighten out our stuff before we could really be available for a happy relationship. We did that. We met, and it just flowed. There was, I mean, do we have to compromise? It's very rare for us to actually have to compromise. Occasionally, very rarely, but most of the time it comes down to one of us wanting to do X more than the other person wants to do Y. And so the person who wants to do Y says, I don't really care about that much. Let's go do X. That's fine. No big deal. Or, planning, how do you want the next vacation to work out? Or what do you want to do with, the business or whatever? We
Mhm.
rarely disagree. That's what's so amazing about it. It's either, one person has the stronger feeling, the stronger sense of it, the stronger idea, and the other one says, "Yeah, that sounds good. Let's go with that."
Yeah,
Compromise is almost never part of it.
that's really awesome because I look at my marriage because I've been married. Well, we've been together for 25 years, married for 23, and the first 15 of that, 15, 18 years of that was a rough road, and there were times when we almost were done with each other and for all different reasons, and that thing, well, we stayed together for the kids. There was a couple times where we literally did. It was just like, okay, well, we really need to work this out because, the kids deserve to have us both, and neither one of us, I don't know. It wasn't like we hated each other. It just wasn't working, and we were just done with each other, for different reasons or whatever. And we ended up sticking it out. And now I'm so glad. But what you say about being in your 40s, like I feel like I didn't even start gaining wisdom in my life until like the rest of it was just all experience. And then you hit 40, and it's like wisdom shows up, and you're like, oh, okay. I mean, I was excited to turn, like, all my friends around me were just like, oh, I'm going to be 40. It's horrible. I'm so old. And I'm just, and even now when I see posts on Facebook, oh, I'm so old. I remember rotary phones. And I'm like, I'm not old. Speak for yourself. You know, my grandma who was in her 70s is old. I'm in my 40s. That's not old. That's like, life is just getting going. Like, this is a blast. Like,
Hmm.
you know, like I just love I envy that. That would be so great to just meet up in your 40s and just be able to connect so well. You know, like I look, you know, we have an amazing history together and I appreciate that so much and we know so much about each other and stuff, but yeah, it was a struggle. And when you're talking about compromise, you know, it was like it was we both compromised and then resented because of our compromises, you know, for
Hmm.
different reasons. And you know, we've gotten past all of that beautifully, which is awesome. But yeah, what a blessing for you to
Well,
to
I
not have to.
suspect too that you and Scott, as you were, starting young and then developing, you were probably having to go through your personal development lessons while you were married, and that's why you were running into all these things, you know. And
Yeah,
once you actually got through the most important ones, the ones that helped you achieve your individual balances, then everything straightened out, and you were able to focus on the positives. You were able to focus on the things that were good because you had
yeah.
gotten yourself into alignment. Pretty cool, actually.
I know.
Yeah,
I look at our wedding pictures and I'm like, wow, we just had no clue. Like, what were we even? We had no business getting married when we were at that time, but we did. And then I look at, like, you know, my kids and their friends, and they're starting to, you know, Madison's 21, so she's got friends that are starting to have babies and getting married and stuff. And it's just like, what are you doing? Like, you were just in high school 2 weeks ago. Like, what are you doing starting a family? Are you crazy? You know, but you know, it's just it's so interesting the different perspective when you're in the middle of it and you're in your 20s and you think you got it all figured out, and you know, and then when your kids are in that space and you're just like, wow, you guys don't have a clue what you're doing. You know, like my daughter, her and her boyfriend, you know, they're going through issues that you go through when you first move in together and first, you know, and you know, I'm trying to solve it all, and I'm just like, I gotta stop. She's got to go through all of this stuff.
absolutely.
She's gonna
Yeah.
figure it all out, and she's gonna be crying part of the time, and she's gonna be laughing part of the time, and you know, it's just
By the
part of
way,
life.
that's love. What you just described, that what you're willing to do for her, that's real love.
Yeah.
That's the true kind, because you have so much respect for her that you're willing to let her go through what she needs to go through in
Well,
order to learn
I
what she needs to
try.
learn.
Well, I try really hard. I'm a micromanager. Kids are always like, "Mom, back off." You
Oh,
know?
okay.
But
Well,
but it is but it has been a huge lesson for me just to go. You know, both my husband and I, because she'll have a bad day and she'll call us. You know, we'll put her on speakerphone. She's just like, "Oh, this happened and that happened at work," and you know, because she's a coach and she's a teacher's aide, and she's just like, and the girls couldn't even hit the ball over the net and blah, you know, and she's just like complaining, and we're trying to fix everything, and then we're just like, we just need, she just is calling to vent. She doesn't want us to fix it. She just knows that we'll listen to her, you know. She doesn't, you know, so
exactly.
I don't know. It's a huge lesson as a parent to just back off because you've been fixing things their whole lives, you know,
Hmm.
and
Well,
then you just have to
we've
back.
got some more questions here to address. So let's
Okay,
see what do
sorry.
we have here. Well, actually, we had they've been talking to each other actually. Jeffrey and Amanda actually have been exchanging quite a bit. Um, let's see. I know I saw at least one question here. Well, Jeffrey said, referring to those difficult times, those are the times you have to worry of and ask yourself if you want to be right or do you want to be happy. That's a really good question. I mean, it's not really so much a question for us to answer; it's a question for us to take notice of, because
Mhm.
we have that option at all times. Do we want to be right or do we want to be happy? Those of us who choose to try to be right are setting ourselves up to be miserable, because we're basically saying, I can't be happy unless you agree with me. And that's a lose
Mhm.
lose situation that you can't win with that. I have a lot of experience with that one. I know that one real well.
Yeah, I
That
think
was
I do too. I've definitely learned to let go of that. But
Yeah, it's good to let go of. It's really good. Um, and then let's see. Amanda said, well, let's see. Jeffrey said, I would also ask him if he truly wants the same thing. If not, and you do, that's a conversation to be had. If he does, but just convincing, may have to drag him with you, but you can use that opportunity to reaffirm your beliefs. I might try to avoid the dragging him, but Amanda says, just happy, that's
that was
all.
my fault.
She says, I am, but it's frustrating when I try to explain the positive and everything. He's shifting a little just based on my vibration. I can see it. It's like trying to keep him on track with the positivity. LOL. I was just wondering about the opposite vibe canceling each other out. And that's a really good point. People wonder about that. What happens when you have two different vibrations going on at the same time? They don't actually cancel each other out. They just don't connect. They aren't.
Hmm.
It's like if you think of vibrating objects as like floating in midair. And you have two of them that are vibrating at different speeds and they start to come close to each other, they kind of like bounce away from each other because the vibrations don't.
Hmm.
Whereas the ones that try to come together and they have similar vibrations, they kind of snap together. That's the law of attraction at work. So
Yeah.
when your vibration is different from your spouse's vibration, there's a lack of communication going on. There's a lack of experience going on. You're not experiencing life in the same way. You're not in the same space. You're not in the same time. You're not in the same vibration. You're not in the same energy. None of it is the same. I mean, if somebody were to walk into your house, they'd say, well, you're both in the same place at the same time. But that's about it. I mean, in terms of
Yeah.
the experience is completely different. So they don't really cancel each other out. They just don't affect each other. The reason I told the story about how, like, if Louise is feeling bad and I've just come off a podcast and I'm feeling good, um, I always think about that situation as I need to keep myself in a high place, as good a feeling place as I can, because I know that if she is trying to climb her way out, my high vibration is going to help her do that. If she's not
Hmm.
trying to climb her way out, nothing I'm going to do is going to help. I mean,
Right.
what are my options? If my options are to feel good while she's feeling bad, in which case there's no connection going on, so it doesn't help, or to fall down to her level if she's not going to rise up. And if I'm falling to her level, that means we're both at a low vibration. And at that low
Hmm.
vibration, both of us are attracting the wrong stuff. Both of us are miserable. Both of us are unhappy. Both of us are manifesting stuff we don't want to have. Well, what's the good of that? It doesn't help anybody. So,
Yeah. I
like you say, you got to stay at that high vibration. That's you can't fix it for them, but you can set that shining star example so that when they're ready to climb up, it's easier because it really is easier to have somebody up there already feeling good when you're trying to climb up there. It's a lot easier.
right. Right. And I love the just the um concept of sending them love. Like just, you know, I don't know. I always feel like what really changed for me in my relationship with my husband is when I decided to love him for who he was and not for who I thought he should be. And
Right.
and that's a really good way to look at it because right now Amanda wants her husband, I'm assuming it's her husband or boyfriend. Um
Mhm.
um she wants him to be in a better place and be happier, and you can get frustrated with a person when they're not, which is just totally negates the whole thing when you get frustrated with someone. but but when you just are like, you know what, I married him or I'm with him because of who he is and I love him and I'm here to help if he needs it. And I think about, like, you can lead the horse to water but you can't make him drink, but you could brush him and you can tell them how
Mhm.
great they are. You can walk them around, you know what I mean? Give them some hay
Yeah.
or whatever. But
Well,
yeah, it doesn't mean you have to be irritated and frustrated and force it on them. You can just be like, oh, well, you're not ready to drink the water, but that doesn't mean you're bad or anything. You're just not ready. And when you get thirsty enough and want it enough, you'll figure it out.
it's funny that you use that metaphor of tending to a horse because, in a sense, that's what Louise did with me yesterday. I mean, I was feeling pretty low. I'd been working on trying to get myself up. I'd made some progress, but I was still feeling it by the time we went to bed at night. And she just started treating me like a prince and just
Mhm.
everything that she appreciates me about me and so forth. And I had to just grin because I could tell what she was doing, right? I knew,
Yeah,
it's very obvious what she's doing. And so I was just kind of grinning like a half grin, like, yeah, yeah, okay, you're right. Yeah. And it was helping. It was helping. I mean, it was making it easier for me to just get into that happier place. I actually got there fairly quickly with her help last night. So, I mean, she handled it
nice.
beautifully. Yeah, just by staying in that shining star position. It's really cool. Oh, and I guess Amanda likes what we're saying. She says that we nailed it. So there you go. That's good.
Oh, good.
Well, we got about 5 minutes left. I want to make sure I get a couple of announcements in that I have been remiss in getting in each time, but I am trying to do it. Reminding people to become subscribers if you're not yet subscribers. The links are in most of the places where we post this. Just click the link that's appropriate for your device. It'll walk you through it, and bang, just like that, you will get all of the episodes that we do coming to your smartphone as we publish them. And then, of course, share the fact that you're listening to the program with other people you know who you think might be interested, or it might be appropriate to share it with, because we want to try to spread the word as much as we can. And we appreciate the efforts of all the fans who do exactly that. We have some great fans out there, Shelly. I don't know if you've been
Yep.
able to notice it enough, but people who are just really doing their best to spread the word is really, it's heartwarming. It feels so good. So thank you to everybody who is helping to spread the word, because you're the greatest. You're the best fans in the world as far as I'm concerned. So thank you very much. And oh, I also want to encourage people too. Most of our listeners don't listen to the live stream. Most people listen to the recording, which is what a podcast is, and that's great. Just because you're listening to the podcast as a recording doesn't mean you can't participate. Feel free to send in messages by email or website or Facebook, Twitter, whatever, and we'll include it in the conversation just like we're doing today. So we want to include your thoughts and ideas and questions too. Please feel free to take advantage because we love hearing from our listeners, or as Cindy likes to say, please keep those cards and letters coming in. Dating back to a bygone era that used to say that all the time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that was something that time. We're in a different time today, but it's a good time. There are a lot of good things going on today. And, because we've been around, you and I and others here have been around on the planet a little bit longer, perhaps, we do remember that stuff. But it's also good to remember we're in a good place here. There's a lot of good stuff
Oh,
happening,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned all the good things that people were doing during the government shutdown. I mean, that's wonderful
Mhm.
what's going on. And a lot of that, I'm sure, happened through social media. A lot of that kind
Oh,
of
yeah. Oh,
communication
yeah.
and connection was going on that way. So it's cool stuff, really cool stuff.
Yeah. It
Let's
is.
see. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I, being a work at home mom, I would be very much in solitude if I didn't have social media.
Yeah, right.
Facebook literally is my social life, and some people might look at that and go, "Oh, that's so sad," but it because I work from home. I have tons of time freedom, which I enjoy, and I like making my own hours. But it's nice to have, I can reach out to people in different countries, and say hi in the middle of the day, which is just, as long as they're not sleeping or whatever.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Fortunately, that kind of thing irons itself out. But you're right. That's cool. It's awesome. We get to have kind of, I mean, Louis D'Souza, who does the morning show with me, and tomorrow, Kelly Pretty, and Thursday, Steve Rowell. All three of them live in the UK. I mean, how cool
Yeah.
is that? Three co-hosts who live in the UK. It's fabulous. So yeah,
Yep.
technology is a
Thing.
wonderful thing. Um, let's see. Any last thoughts? How about what's the last thought before we finish off for the day? What's the takeaway from today?
I would just say, allow people to be in their place, encourage them, be a shining star, and start your day, start every day with some good routines to continue the positivity throughout your day.
Absolutely. Well, that's how we started the show today, so that makes sense. Yeah, start with those routines and stick with them, and do that paving process that you do throughout your day. Just find some way to
Hmm.
pave every single little thing you're going to do next. It really does make a difference. So,
Yeah,
thank
that's
you.
awesome.
Thank you, Shelley, for doing the show, and thank you for the times you jumped in on the other shows too. You're more than welcome to keep
Oh,
jumping
no
in.
problem. I haven't done that this week, but I'm gonna definitely give it more effort this coming week. So
Sounds good. Well, we have that to look forward to. So thank you very much. Thank you to our listeners. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.